All epithelial membranes have the same recipe. It's going to be a layer of epithelial tissue that has a secretion lying on a bed of connective tissue. So in this picture, they're showing the skin, and the skin fits this definition. The skin is an epithelial membrane known as the cutaneous membrane. The epithelial tissue is the epidermis. This is stratified squamous epithelial tissue. It has secretions like sweat and oil, and that epithelial tissue is lying on a bed of connective tissue known as the dermis. And so the cutaneous membrane is one example of an epithelial membrane. Another common type of epithelial membrane is a mucous membrane. Mucous membranes line body cavities that are continuous with the outside. And so here, the areas highlighted in blue, the respiratory tract, the digestive tract, are continuous with the outside, and those areas are considered mucous membrane. So a mucous membrane is still an epithelial membrane. It's going to follow the same basic recipe. We're going to have epithelial tissue. That epithelial tissue might be pseudostratified columnar. It could be stratified squamous, or it could even be simple columnar. But whatever type of epithelial tissue it is secreting mucus onto the surface, whether it be by multicellular mucus glands, like in the oral cavity, or if it's just the presence of goblet cells, like we see in the nasal cavity or the stomach. Taking a closer look at a mucous membrane, this is what it looks like inside of the trachea using a microscope. So we can see the hollow lumen. This is where the air is moving in and out, and we can see the cilia projecting into that area. This is the epithelial tissue. This is pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue. We can see a goblet cell secreting mucus onto the surface of this tissue. Right underneath the epithelial tissue is connective tissue. And so that is the definition of an epithelial membrane. So far, we've talked about two different types of epithelial membranes: the cutaneous membrane, mucous membrane, and there's a third type of epithelial membrane that we want to be familiar with, and it's called a serous membrane. Serous membranes are only found in closed body cavities, and in addition, there are only 3 locations for serous membrane. One surrounds the lungs, that's called the pleura. Another surrounds the heart, that's called the pericardium. And another surrounds the abdominal and pelvic organs, and that's called the peritoneum. I'm going to put a separate video out there on the pleura and the pericardium and take a look at the peritoneum as an example in this video. Notice that when you're talking about a serous membrane, whether it's around the heart, the lungs, or the digestive organs, that there is a double layer. Serous membranes always are a double layered membrane. The outer layer is called the parietal layer. Parietal, coming from the word cave, it is always lining the cavity. And then the inner layer is known as the visceral layer. Visceral, coming from the word viscera, organ. The visceral layer is always contacting or coating the actual organ. So taking a look at the peritoneum in particular, the outer layer is known as the parietal peritoneum. And then the inner layer that's actually coating the organ, that's known as the visceral peritoneum.